Okay, today we are going to cover arrays. This PowerPoint presentation that you have in your modules, module 6. And I am going to cover basically only a portion of this PowerPoint presentation, and then I will do another video um, of explaining arrays so it doesn't get tiresome. So in this presentation, basically what we are going to do is to declare an array and assign values to array elements. We are going to discuss that. We are going to discuss how to access array elements and also how to search an array using a loop. The other three topics, like using binary search, sort, reverse methods, use multidimensional arrays, and issues in graphical user interface programs, we are going to do that in another video. Okay, so first of all, if you recall, every time that you declare a variable, you are basically doing the following. You are reserving like memory space for that memory, for that variable, and then also you are declaring what is the data type. So, and by doing that, by saying what is the data type, you're actually defining how much space in memory that will occupy, and also you are defining how data is going to be handled for that variable. Okay, so when you declare an array, it's the same thing. The only thing that now you are declaring a set of variables. So an array, like it says here, is a list of data items that must have all the same data type and the name. So, and the same name. So when we declare an array, say that you declare an array numbers, so that array numbers, all the elements or members of that array should be the same data type, say integer, and then all those elements will be referred with the same name. The only difference is that now we are going to have an index that will actually access each element of the array individually. So each object in an array is an array element. So to distinguish them, we are going to use a subscript, and the subscript is also called an index. We're going to see an example of that soon. So we, for example, let's see this declaration, which could be simpler, but this is the basic declaration of an array. We are saying that sales is an array of doubles. Okay, I always tell people that, look at the declaration, say from right to left. So basically, we are saying that the variable sales, or in this case, array sales, is going to be an array which defines that by using brackets. And then the data type is going to be double. So all the members of sales are going to be double. And then here we are saying, okay, sales will be assigned this to the right. And what are we have at the right? Well, we are defining the array to be a size 20 of doubles, and then the new operator, basically what it does, it creates that array. Okay, so let's go to the next. So an array element, like we said, is an object inside of an array, and we address every element by basically using a subscript or an index. Okay, so that index has to be an integer. Okay, any value that is an integer either is a variable, a constant, or an expression could be used as a subscript or index as long as it's an integer value. Also, the list of elements of an array should start with a 0 always. So if you have an array that is size 10, that means that the first array element, it will be element 0, and the last element will be element number 9. Okay, so here we have an integer contained within square brackets that indicates the position of one array elements. That's an index, and it always starts with 0. Okay, so the first item of the array is going to be element 0, and the last element of the array is always going to be the size of the array minus 1. So for example, the size of your array is 20, like we saw previously, then the last element is going to be 19. Okay, now here, like we said, when you're declaring an array, you have to go back to the declaration that we had previously, where we actually declared an array with 20 elements. This is an example where we have from sales 0, element 0, to sales element 19, 20 elements here. They are, it's very important for you to understand that they are in memory and in contiguous memory. For example, here we have an address 2000, sales 0, and then at 2008 sales 1. That means that each one of these elements, which you can consider that kind of like a variable, each one has 8 bytes of memory. So that is defined by the data type that you are defining the element. In this case, it's basically 8. See, 2000 to 2008, 2016, and so on. So we can assign individually all the elements just by naming the subscript. Say in this case, sales is the name of the array, 0, which is the integer that determines the array, and then here we are assigning to that element 2100. So how do we display that? How do we print an element value? Basically, write line, using write line like you did before with variables, and then you can say, okay, write line sales element 19. Okay, notice that here we're using sales 0, so we are not actually displaying this value, but whatever is in sales element 19. So when you declare an array, basically and we initialize an object, numeric fields. So for example, if you declare an array integer or double or decimal, then those are going to be set to 0. If it's Boolean values, they are going to be set to false, and character values to null. Now, another thing about this that you have to be conscious, and that's why we were using the operator new. Arrays are basically instances of a class, which is system.array. Okay. So how do we initialize values to array? So here are 3 ways that are basically the same thing, and the last one is the one that you should use because it's the simplest one. So, and you have to type less. So basically here we have my scores, okay? Because see, if actually, let me separate this here. I believe it was not explained before. Before you saw that, like for example, in a case like this, I would say my scores is an array of integers, and then semicolon, and then in the next line, I will say my scores will be new integer 5 semicolon. If I do that, actually, let me copy that. And do it here. It doesn't belong in this explanation, but let me do it. It basically will be like this, and then I will have to copy this semicolon. Okay, later I'm going to delete this because but this is the way that we were doing it before. That's the first explanation, but you can actually save these 2 lines by doing this. Oh, I did it. Okay, let me undo a couple of things here. Okay, by basically doing, let me just type it so I don't make a mistake. Equal new int and then size 5. So basically here what we are doing is defining with a single line, with only the second one, defining with a single line my scores as an array size 5. Okay, that's what we are doing, just with that line. Now in these 3 lines we are doing that in every single line. However, we are doing it in different ways. So let me just delete this line, which doesn't belong here, and now let's explain each one of these. So now we are defining my scores as an array of integers that is going to be created by using new, and the size of that array is going to be 5. However, we are also initializing each member of my scores by giving to element 0, remember we start with 0, giving to element 0 a value of 100. My scores 1 is going to be 76, my scores 2 is going to be 88, my scores 3 is going to be 100, my scores 90 is my scores 4 is going to be 90. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are the 5 elements of that array. Now, if you are initializing a value, you don't need to specify the size of the array. So you can actually, instead of doing new integer and then size 5, you can say new integer. So basically you're saying an array of integers with new created in them is going to assign the first element to 100, 76, 88, 190. Just by initializing all the values, now you are giving to every single, you are basically defining the size of the array and defining what every element of the array is going to have. So also you can even make it shorter by just eliminating this, because it's understood that if you say my scores is going to be an array of integers and then you are initializing the values, then it means also that you are actually creating the array, so you don't need to say new. Okay, so, and this is exactly for those that know how to program in C, basically the same way that it will be done in C. Okay, so here is the part, it says exactly the same thing I said here. If you initialize an array with values, you are not required to give the array a size. Second example, if you initialize an array, you do not used to need the keyword new. Example 3, because it's obvious that you are actually creating the array. So the keyword new is redundant. Okay, let me. So in your Power presentation, this is not going to be there. I added this. So now let's talk about accessing array elements with loops. So since array is a set of variables, the ideal structure to access an array is a loop. So let's use a loop to perform arithmetic on each element. So here we have different ways. One using while and the other one using for. Now both ways here are, let me add this, counter controlled loops. Both of them are counter control loops, which means that there is a variable that is controlling how many times the loop is executed. So for example, in this case, in both cases, you have to initialize sub, which as I said is the counter variable, to 0. Then in the case of while, we are going to check that sub is less than 5. That means that the values that sub will make this statement true are the values, since we're starting from 0, the values of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which are actually the element values of the array my scores that we declared previously. And we declare my scores with the size 5. So this goes from 0 to 4 because 5 is not less than 5. 5 is equal to 5, so therefore that becomes false. So here we are saying, okay, my scores sub, which means that in every loop this is going to change. So and the first loop is going to be my scores 0, my scores element 1, my scores element 2, element 3, and each time what we are doing is adding 3 to what the content of my scores was before. And later we increment sub, which is the counter variable. If you don't do this, you have to do this to avoid to have an infinite loop. Okay, that's necessary. This statement here is necessary. In every counter control loop, you are going to have to initialize the variable, to use the variable in the condition to see how many times this is going to happen. Obviously, it's going to be 5. And you have to update the variable. In this case, since this is a counter control loop that goes up, you have to increment the value of the counter control variable. In a simpler way, when you use for, and this is here, they have it here like this. This is incorrect because for is not with capital F. So we have this for. So here in this for, we are saying, okay, an integer, which is going to be sub, is going to be starting 0, because the first part of the for has 3 parts. Initialize the variable, check the condition, and update the variable. The same 3 parts that I was talking about in the while, this one, initialize, check the condition, increment the variable. All those 3 in the for, you just do it right here within the parentheses. And the parentheses include initialization, condition, updating the variable. So basically what this is saying is that sub will go from 0 to 4, and every loop we are increment sub. So at the beginning it's going to be 0, so whatever is my scores element 0 will be added 3 to it, and then we return here and we increment sub. Now sub is 1, 1 is less than 5, and we do it again until 4, until we have sub equal to 4. Okay, so that's how, by using loops, we can access array elements. Okay, now since an array is basically a member of the array class, when you create an object, you are creating an object that is part of that class, system.array. And one of the properties that is defined in that property is the length property. So as soon as you declare an array and you say, well, this array is size 25, then the length property of that array is going to be the 25, which you can use it in your favor. For example, in this code here, so instead of using 5, because the size of the array is 5, you can say my scores dot length. Okay, let me make this bigger. So let me move this. Let me see. No, that didn't work. That's even worse. No. Okay, yeah, but I need, let me see. Maybe just a little bit bigger. Okay. Not what I wanted, but all these will be in the same line. But basically, you can say, instead of using sub less than 5, I can say just sub less than my scores. Actually, I wrote this wrong. it should be my scores exactly like this, dot length. Since that's 5, and there's some advantage of doing that. If you change the size of the array, you don't need to change this because immediately length will be changed. So again, using the length property. So for example, here we have another example. Integer, my scores is declared as an array of integers, and we have the values 100, 76, 88, 190, 5 of them, so obviously the size of my score is 5. So you can say right line array size is, and then my score dot length, this will actually print array size is 5. And then here, when we have the for loop, and this for loop basically what it's going to do is display every element of the array my scores. We go to 0 to the size of the array and increment x. So we are going to do right line my scores x. So basically this for loops, this line actually belongs to 4. Let's put some indentation here. This line belongs inside the 4. So what this is going to do is display every single element of my scores. So let's see something else that we can do with arrays is using for each. Which in for each, we can use for each every time that we are going to do iterations through all the elements of the array. So, and then we can use a variable in for each that holds the value that we have in such array. So for example, here we have, again, let me do this well. We have pay rate, which is an array of doubles, and pay rate has the value 6, 7.35, 812, 1245, and 2222. Is 5 elements, so pay rate is size 5. Now, you don't need to you don't have to be concerned with the size, because if you use for each, which means that it will go through all the elements of pay rate as an array. So all the members of pay rate will be read by using for each. This is read only basically. So we are then defining money as double, so money will be the variable that is in pay rate. So every time money, every time that we go through a different iteration, money basically takes the value of pay rate element 0, pay rate element 1 to element 4, being for each, being pay rate size 5 array. So when you use this right line here, basically you're saying, okay, in this element 0 that is listed after the string, we are going to display money. Now remember, money is double, so every double that belongs to class double has a method called toString that change that value in double to a string, and then with this here we are saying that it's going to be displayed as currency. Okay, so basically for each is simple. It's a simple way when you need to access every element of an array. Okay, now observation that I did for each is only used if you want to access every array element, and also the iteration is read-only. So searching an array. So we can search an array using a for loop, a while loop. My preferred one is using a for loop. So for example here, say that you have an item that is ordered, then that this will be a variable that you basically request from a user, a file, and it's a value that obviously this value is going to be an integer, and that value, that item order, you are trying to look for that into array. The array contains the values, the different values. So what we are trying to do with this is to see if the item is in the array. So here with this for loop, we are saying, oh, okay, we are going to start from 0, which is the first element of the array. The array is valid values, and with the length property, we are basically saying how long we want to do this loop, which in this case is every single value, because we're saying less than the length of the valid values. And notice we don't know, how big valid values is, and we increment every loop x. And then notice we don't need braces here, because now we have an if, and instead of if we have this single content. So now we say, okay, if the item order is whatever is equal to valid values x, then we set is valid item to true. Obviously at the beginning, before this loop, is valid item had to be initialized to false. So here we have this will go through every value until we find it. So if we go through every value and never this is set to true, then the final value of its valid item will be false, and you can send a message item not found, or if it is found, then you can say item found, and then do the necessary action that we want to do. Okay, this is a sequential search since we have to go from the beginning to the end. And another thing that we can use this is with parallel arrays. When a parallel array, one array will have the item, and the second array will hold corresponding data to that specific item. Okay, I believe that next we are going to have an example of that, and that will be the last topic, so we don't get overwhelmed with this, and we can create another video. So see here, let me expand this so you can see it better. Here we have two arrays, valid values and prices. If you notice, I cannot select them individually because this is actually a picture, so it's a whole object. Here we have valid values, which we are saying valid values is an array of integers that has the following elements: 101, 108, 201, etc. If you notice, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 elements. Actually, let me see that I counted properly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 actually. So we have 10 elements. So basically we're saying that valid values is an array size 10 of integers by initializing with these values. Then we are saying prices is an array of double, and here we have 10 elements too. So basically these are parallel arrays. Prices and valid values are parallel arrays because now we have that element 101, it has a price of 89 cents. Item 108, it has the value 123, 201, 350, 213, 0.69, etc. So that's what is a parallel array. Parallel array don't have to be the same data type. For example, this is integer, this is double, but they have to have the same size. And the trick is this, that for example, I can look, say, for item invalid value. Let me look for item 266. So I come here, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's this, 266. So when we look for it, so this is element 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we know that 266 is element 4. So therefore, element 4 in prices, it will tell us the price of valid value 266. So it will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So is therefore is 5.79. Okay, so and that's what this program is doing. See, it basically, we have item price set to 0. Valid item, as I told you, is a Boolean value set to false at the beginning. Item order is an integer, and then we prompt the user to enter an item. So here with the read line, the user enters a value that should be one of contains in the array of valid values, otherwise it's going to say item not found. And this read line, whatever is entered here, which is a string, is going to be converted to an integer and applied to item order. So now item order, excuse me, we have a 4 here that goes from 0 to valid values length. So basically we know that the valid values is size 10, so this is going to happen 10 times. And we say if item order is equal to valid values X, then we set valid item to true, and the item price will be prices X, because X is going to indicate the index content of where we found the value. As for example, the sample that I said before, 266 is element 4, so element 4 here is 579, and that will be the price. Now, if valid item is valid, then we write the price. Otherwise, we say sorry, item not found. Okay, so we said that was the last one, but I have to make to improve the efficiency of the loop. We can do something. Notice that, actually, let me go back. Notice that, let's say that valid values have 1,000 values, and we find the value in element number 5. This loop will actually go through all the 1,000 values, even if the value was found, which doesn't make any sense. So now, if we want to improve the efficiency of the loop, we do the same thing that we did before, except that now, since x is our counter variable, we can say, oh, okay, if this is true, if this happens to be true, then we are going to give valid values, length value, which is the end of the array, to x. So therefore, when we return, x is going to even be incremented, and x will be actually not less than valid values.length, and the loop will end right there. So in this case, if we are in a search in an array that has 1000 values, but we found it in element number 6, it will stop right there, which is more efficient. Okay, that is for today. Later I'm going to create another video, explaining arrays. Thank you.